Hello and welcome to the shores of beautiful Lake Rotorua. Behind me here is Utahina Creek, and beyond that the village of Ohinemutu. Today I want to start a new series of videos for all you writers out there. I've been a fiction editor for a long time and I see the same mistakes come up again and again from new writers and those who should maybe know better. Some of these topics may sound basic, but believe me when I say I'm going to let you in on the things that will make your editor sit up and take notice. That's right, this is how to totally impress your editor. Every writer wants to be excellent. That includes you, or you wouldn't be listening to me right now. There's much to be said about creativity, about defeating writer's block and getting your story finished. But what happens then? Ideally, you want to do some polishing on it yourself before you hand it over to an editor, because it would make my job so much easier. So I want to cover some basic principles of correctness in writing. Think of it as a place to start. There will be much more for you to discover along your journey. I've gathered these topics from over 12 years of experience as a professional fiction editor. These are the kind of mistakes I see most often. If you're a client of mine and you recognize yourself in what I say, take heart. It wasn't just you. All of these issues have come up multiple times throughout my editing career. Many of them even come up in almost every manuscript I work on. Writing fiction is very much a case of know the rules to break them. If you're aware of what you're doing, you can break as many rules as you want to aim at a specific effect only attained by something unconventional in your language. Breaking rules is a very fun part of writing stories, but you have to know the rules first. That's a far cry from, say, breaking rules while not realizing it, which may have unwanted effects in places where they aren't helpful. Fair warning, the examples I give are likely to break any of the rules except the one currently under discussion. Do use all of the problematic things in your first draft. Forget about getting it right and just get it down. You can fix it later, but you'll have nothing to fix if you don't write it in the first place. Let your brain blurt out all your ideas in any form, any way, any sort of mess in the first shape that comes to mind. Really, it'll be fine. Of course, I hope that when you've gone through a first draft or two fixing all these things, you'll gain a better grasp of them in your mind and thus begin to write cleaner first drafts. Eventually. It doesn't have to be now. Perfectionism is the enemy of completion. Ongoing practice will, however, someday help you remember these things more effortlessly as you write that first draft. Remember, effortless. No first draft will ever be totally clean, and while you write it, you need to switch off the editor, or you'll never be satisfied with your first sentence. During the writing phase, it's more important that you have that first sentence, and all those that follow. So again, forget all these rules while you create your draft. If any rules stick in your head and you can use them immediately without much thought, then by all means do so, but don't focus on them. You should see my first drafts. What a mess. I have my own pet mistakes that I or my editors only notice much later. That can all be fixed. The main thing is that the story exists, although in a rougher form. My personal theory has to do with the left and right brain. If the right brain is creative and the left is analytical, then I work better when I don't mix the two together. Switch off that editor brain while writing. If any of it remains subconsciously accessible in the chaos of creating, that's also fine. Then, when you're finished, switch over to analyze your wonderful story. Somewhat related, for the same reason I always recommend writing numbers as words if the words are not unrealistically complicated like 1921 or 53,036. However, 78, 4,000, a million, these look better in text than digits, and it's my belief that the sudden appearance of digits calls up the reader's analytical, mathematical side of the brain, which in turn can throw them out of the story where they were immersed in imaginative co-creation with the author, picturing the things they read on the page, only to be hit over the head with what looks like mathematics. That's what happens to me anyway. Just me? Okay, whatever. Now, I want to talk about exceptions because every rule has exceptions. I'll explain them as they come to light, but there are likely more than I can think of. This is definitely a case of the exception proving the rule, otherwise we could just merrily ignore all the rules forever. That would make for a rather disturbing reading experience. One main exception to stylistic rules is in dialogue. I'll mention this often, but it applies almost everywhere. Dialogue does not have to follow the same rules as narrative, the reason being that people don't speak in perfect grammar or with perfect style. It would sound strange if they did. You wouldn't have a street urchin speaking exactly like Queen Victoria. It wouldn't fit. Personalized dialogue is an excellent way to differentiate the voices of your characters. They may have different speaking habits, turns of phrase, habitual errors. All this can bring extra life and color to the people in your story. So, in general, don't apply all the rules to dialogue, especially if you're dealing with characters who speak some kind of local dialect. People do be like that, after all. The first consideration in dialogue is therefore not 100% accuracy, but rather, how would this person actually speak? Another exception exists if there's a particular purpose for breaking the rule, whether for emotional effect, to speed up or slow down the action in that moment, to create something poetic, to make the reader focus on a particular sentence or phrase, or if there's a story-related reason that requires the narrative to behave differently in a particular context. I'll mention this again as we go through the rules. However, exceptions should be exactly that, exceptional. If we break the rules too often, or the same rule too often, it looks like we don't know what we're doing. Watch for them in your recreational reading. Learn how other authors do it. Gauge whether you as a reader find it good or overdone, and you'll soon get a feel for how much is good for your own writing.